Hello, I am Adam Henning. I'm the artistic director of the space, and I'm very excited to have been invited by the King's Head Theatre to do this. So thank you very much to Shadi and to everybody there for inviting me on here. It's great to see some of you joining us on Instagram and on Facebook. Yeah, please do ask me any questions that you have as and when you think of them, and I'll do my best to get all of them. But first, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about me and what I do. So I'm the artistic director of the space, as I mentioned. We're quite a small team at the space. There are only three of us. So my role is very varied. I'm in charge of pretty much everything that there is to do, from programming and fundraising to marketing to managing the venue, to all of our participatory work and other bits and pieces. So I have a really quite a broad remit at the space. Yeah, and the space is a converted church on the Isle of Dogs. For those that haven't been there, it's a really lovely venue. Sorry, my lighting's just fallen down. There we go. Just trying to line up the Instagram as well as the Facebook. Apologies on Instagram. There we go. Yeah, so the space is a fringe venue on the Isle of Dogs in East London, and we do a range of different shows. We programme new writing, classics, revivals, a whole range of different types of theatre. We have a year-round programme. We have our own in-house production company, so we stage our own shows as well as being a receiving house. We have a participatory theatre programme called Spaceworks, so we work with local children and adults, providing them with creative opportunities. We have an artist development programme, so we do a lot of work with new writing, and we support sort of directors and actors in lots of different ways. And we've been managing an outdoor performance space in Canary Wharf for the last 5 years. There's a roof garden on top of a new Crossrail station in Canary Wharf, and at one end of that there's an amphitheatre space, and we manage that on behalf of Canary Wharf with all sorts of free activities and bits and pieces going on throughout the summer. So yeah, so there's a lot that we do. It's a really busy venue, and we have lots of different things going on. My connection to the King's Head Theatre is quite an old one, really. I directed a play at the King's Head quite a few years ago now. It was called Five Card Trick. It was written by a guy called Andrew McGuinness, and was performed by four guys, one of whom was a good friend of mine, Chris Newland. And we had a lunchtime slot at the King's Head, and I think Celia Imrie was performing the evening show whilst we were on there. But it was a play about four friends playing cards around a dining board, and the kind of sort of tensions between them that arose throughout it. But yeah, it was a lot of good fun, and I certainly have fond memories of being at the King's Head, and I've been to see quite a few shows there. I scouted a show at the King's Head. There was a play called We Need to Talk About Bobby from EastEnders, and we ended up having that show at the space along with the company's next show. That company's name's gone out of my head for now, but I will try and recall that before the end of this video. What type of work? I'm really passionate about storytelling. I love a good story, and I like seeing different ways of stories being told. So really love sort of innovative theatre. I watched the online version of The Encounter by Complicité recently, and thoroughly enjoyed that. But really, I just enjoy consuming stories in many different forms, from my 3-year-old stories about the PJ Masks to novels and all sorts of other different bits and pieces. I got started in the industry. Well, I was always quite into theatre as a young man. I directed my first show when I was 14, and I ended up going to, I did National Youth Theatre, and then I went to Goldsmiths College and did an English and Theatre Arts degree. And on leaving college, we formed a couple of companies, a couple of theatre companies. So I was doing sort of shows in various different venues. And then I had the opportunity to apply for the job at the Space, where we had been as a company a few times. And yeah, so I took that opportunity, and I've been at the space now for over 15 and a half years. So I've been at the venue for a very long time. Yeah, and that's kind of how the sort of career path sort of happened for me. I think I've been very fortunate in my career, and quite a lot of the time it's being at the right place at the right time. But yeah, that's sort of how I ended up at the space. And yeah, day-to-day life now. Well, currently it's very different, obviously, to what it would be like where we open at the space. My day-to-day life at the moment consists of a bit of homeschooling, sharing this our shed, which has turned into our home office, with my wife, and then managing the online theatre programme that we are producing through the space, which is the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about today. So we've been, yeah, if anyone has any questions about what we do at the space or anything about the venue at all, please feel free to sort of drop us a comment or a question in there. So Lockdown Looking Up is the name of our online program. We started fairly soon after the lockdown, thinking about what we could do, what elements of our program and of what we were doing would be transferable to happening online. And one of those things was our Scriptspace program. Scriptspace is our script development service. So every year we have a window, and playwrights are invited to submit early draft work. All of the plays are read by our panel of readers, and every play that's sent in gets written feedback from two members of the panel. This January we received over 200 scripts, so the panel were very busy reading through all of those. And the sort of final element of Scriptspace is that we select a number of plays for staged readings, which we would normally do at the space. We bring the actors and a director in, and we give them about 5 hours to kind of work on the scripts, just to get it on its feet. And then the audience would arrive. We'd have the reading. It would be the first time that the playwright hears the play read aloud. And then we'd have a feedback session, and then we'd all head up to the bar afterwards. And we'd scheduled 5 plays to be read in March and April, which obviously couldn't happen. So we decided to try 2 or 3 of them online and see if we could do them via Zoom. And it worked quite well. We did a play called Labyrinth Diet by Horton, and then a couple of others on Zoom. And we were really pleased with the response and the reaction that we got. People were really delighted to have the opportunity to talk about theatre, and to see some stuff. And actually the Zoom app worked quite well for the sort of online reading. It's kind of a glorified table read in a way. Scriptspace back in the early days used to be more of a table read, but we developed it further. And now this is kind of a weird morphed version of that. It's slightly better than a table read, but we're not doing a full staged version, obviously. So that was the first thing we did. We also run workshops on a Monday evening for adults. It's just participatory theatre workshops. They're very much open and inclusive to anybody who wants to join in. And so I invited the group to try some online workshops, and we kind of worked together, really. They helped me to develop how we might deliver workshops online. What were the pitfalls? What were the things that we could do and couldn't do, and how do we make that work? So we developed some of those, and then we also I have a brilliant arts committee who helped me come up with different ideas and help program the space and all that sort of stuff. And we had a meeting of that group, and we came up with the idea of doing the Space Theatre Club. So it's pretty much like a book club, except we watch plays online. There's a huge amount of online theatre that has become available for free for people to watch. Some really fantastic stuff. Almost too much for us to be able to catch. People need to leave it online for longer, so we have more of an opportunity to see it But we decided we would do a theatre club. So it's essentially like a book club, but we watch plays online and then we meet on Zoom and we talk about it. And we started off with a play called Cypress Avenue that was on at the Royal Court. And one of my colleagues knew one of the actors who was in that. So we invited Amy Malloy along to join us for the discussion. And it really elevated kind of what we were doing, having Amy along as the special guest, just to provide that insight into how that show was created and her role within that. So we looked at that and we thought, well, let's develop that further and let's see if we can get special guests along for all of the theatre club sessions that we have. And we've been really fortunate since to have people like Patsy Ferran came and spoke to us about Treasure Island, along with Lizzie Clacken, the designer. We had playwright director Nina Rain talk to us about Tiger Country that was on at the Hampstead Theatre. And we've since watched Coriolanus that was on in Canada, and The Encounter. So the Space Theatre Club has been a really lovely addition to the online programme, and something that we've never ever done before and probably wouldn't have considered doing were it not for lockdown. Certainly, I think the sort of calibre of special guests that we've had, I'm not sure that they would have been available had they not been locked down. So, having sort of tried all different things out, we decided to apply to the Arts Council for their emergency funding, and we were really fortunate to have been granted that funding. So last week we launched the full programme, Lockdown Looking Up, and it includes 10 more script-based readings, one of which we had last Friday. It includes 12 meetings of the Space Theatre Club. It includes, we are developing 6 online courses. I have 6 theatre facilitators, directors and drama tutors. And we have formed a group to sort of develop online courses and to really sort of understand how they work and what we can deliver. So we are launching the first of those online courses on Monday next week. It's a theatre and activism course, and it's going to be led by Caroline Jayarapnam Joyner. So that opens on Monday, and there are still places available for that if people are interested in exploring theatre and activism. 2 of our courses are going to be aimed at children and younger people, and the other 4 courses are going to be either aimed at adults or sort of fairly open access. So we've got some exciting bits and pieces coming up. There's I think we're doing a history of theatre course, we're doing an improvisation and clowning course. So there's stuff there for beginners, for people who are either had never done theatre or theatre workshops or at the early stages of their careers, and there should be stuff there that's interesting for people who are sort of well into what they do. So I've talked about Theatre Club and Script Space and the Spaceworks programme. The final element of the Lockdown Looking Up programme is our performances, and there are kind of 2 halves to this. 3 of the companies that were due to perform at the Space are creating online versions of their show, so it won't be exactly the same show, but it will be a version of that production. So we have a play called, a show called How to Survive the Share Apocalypse, which is about the life lessons that Share brings to us all. And that's going to have an online viewing. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a quick sip. Sorry for that, something in my throat. And then we've got 2 other shows. Lexi, which is a sort of a retelling of the Electra story, and Right So Babes, which is a new play about some young girl losing her virginity. And those shows are all going to have online versions that will be performed and streamed over the next few months. And then the final half of that online performance strand is 2.0 Fest. So back in February, we did a duologue festival called 2 Fest, at the space, and we had 13 playwrights we commissioned to write two-handers, and those were all staged at the space. Sorry, my throat's gone really, really dry. I've got a really bad tickle. I'm just going to grab some water. I will be right back. Apologies for this. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for sticking around and not leaving whilst looking at an empty screen. But yeah, it was terrible. My throat had just gone, so I'm just going to take a sip of water. So yeah, so that was so 2.0 Fest. I was talking about the online version of the Two Festival. Will be 8 playwrights that we've commissioned to write 15 to 30-minute plays to be performed online. So that's the kind of the new angle for this, is that those plays will be performed by 2 actors in separate locations. And we've got a fantastic lineup of playwrights that we've selected for that programme. So really excited about seeing what they come up with. We've started to see a few early drafts coming in, and we'll have the sort of full first drafts by the end of this month, and then the festival itself is going to take place at the end of July, beginning of August. So yeah, so that's kind of the Lockdown Looking Up programme. It's quite full. There's lots going on. There's opportunities to sort of get involved and participate. There's kind of things to see and things to do, I guess. So please, yeah, if anyone has any questions about what we're doing online, then feel free to pop them into the comments, and I'll do my best to answer those. A few shout outs, a few companies that we're working for that I think are worthy of a mention, who are also doing some great stuff online during the lockdown. We've just appointed a new associate theatre company. We've had 3 past, and so this will be our 4th. But Mrs. C's Collective are a group with a very much a focus on new writing. They're made up of 3 people: Charlotte Everest, who's a director; Francis Grinn, who's a playwright; and Jenny Eggleton, who is an actor. And they've been working with a group of playwrights for a year, and this week they are sharing the work of 5 of those with online readings. It's called The Big Share, and if you go to Mrs. C's Collective on Facebook, you'll be able to find out all of those. The first one is this evening, and then there are more on Thursday and Saturday of this week. They've also done another exciting thing that they're doing is the reading room, where they're focusing on one playwright that they admire each month, and the group are reading 3 plays by that playwright, and then there'll be a Zoom meeting with the playwright there to answer sort of questions and to talk about the plays. So we're reading 3 plays by Marina Carr this month, and then next month it's 3 plays by Mark Ravenhill. There's a question. I've got a question. Do you think there would be benefit post-lockdown for more R&Ds or pre-R&D to be done online, like the table readings you have spoken of? Yeah, absolutely. I think this has really changed our focus and attitude towards doing things online. Just as an example, the first script space reading that we did after lockdown, we had 83 people watching it online. And I don't think we've ever had more than 40 people watching a reading at the space in person at any one time before. So I think there's really great scope for doing these things. Perhaps doing an online version of them, or if the technology is good enough and if the setup is good enough to stream the sort of live version as it's happening in the theatre, I think would be a really exciting way of doing that. Yeah, I think from watching a lot of online theatre, I think I've learned that your setup is really important, and having the ability to sort of to film from multiple angles, and then having the time to sort of edit those angles and edit that footage together um, is really worthwhile doing. Um, I've always been of the belief that theatre shouldn't be filmed. Theatre is very much live and in the moment, and it's there. And if you miss it, you miss out. Um, but I've had the opportunity to see shows that I missed when they were live first time around, and I'm really grateful that's been there for me. So I think there's a really exciting opportunity to record and create a digital archive of the work that comes through the space. Quite often these are brand new companies or emerging companies that we're working with, and our hope is that they go on and do fantastic things in the future. For us to have a sort of a record of that work, I think would be a really exciting thing. And certainly the other quick thing I'll sort of mention on that is the Space Theatre Club is something that I really think we will aim to continue going afterwards, whether that's an online version or I think there'll be perhaps two versions of it, but certainly an online theatre club that meets to discuss plays they've seen is something that we would look towards doing as well. I've got a question on Facebook here that I'm just going to scroll down so I can see all of it. The space strikes me as potentially able to operate as a socially distanced theatre, given its flexibility and the ability to spread out audience and performers. Are we likely to see theatre performed differently as a result of COVID over the coming months? Yeah, it's interesting. The space is, just to sort of respond to that comment, I think the space is does have the potential to be flexible in the way that we have our audience. It's very much a square church hall in terms of the structure of it, with a stage at one end. So we have had audiences in the round and thrust and promenade and traverse and all sorts of different ways. So we potentially do have the room to get a reasonable sized audience in there, socially distanced. It becomes a little bit harder when it comes to the performers themselves, in that we don't have we only have the one dressing room, so we have quite a small space. For that, they would potentially have to use different areas of the theatre or take it in turns to sort of use the dressing room. If we're using lots of the venue in different ways for audience, it kind of shrinks the space that they have to perform in. That's not to say that it's not possible. I think we're just a long way from having answered all the questions that we need to answer in order to be able to get there. We do have a couple of shows that are one or two handers that we had lined up to perform at the space who might find that sort of easier to manage. We have one company who all live together, so they are socially isolating together in their home at the moment. So for them, that might be a little bit of an easier thing to negotiate. Are we likely to see theatre perform differently as a result of COVID over the coming months? Yeah, I imagine so. I just don't have the answers at the moment for how that's going to look when we reopen, and what the guidance is going to be really about how we do things. I think there are ways of making it work and making it happen, but I think it's really, really tough to generate those audiences and to make that work. So I think there's going to be a lot of really hard questions and really tough decisions to make about how we approach it in the future. Certainly, it's not going to be an easy one to manage. I mean, theatres and theatre artists are all very experienced at being creative and kind of making do with different situations. Their credit, but in some circumstances, I think it we need to really sort of consider how we support venues and theatre companies through that sort of through those difficulties and the challenges that they are definitely likely to face during those coming times. I hope that answered the question. Any other questions that we're coming up? I'll talk about another one of our associate companies and what they're doing then. So the Undisposables are a company that joined us last year as associates. They performed They did a production of Morgan Lloyd Malcolm's The Wasp at the Space, and they followed that up with a production called The Jailer's Daughter, which was a modern take on a Shakespeare play. And they were halfway through their run of Julius Caesar when lockdown struck. So unfortunately, we had to pull the end of their run. But they formed through doing scratch nights, from scratching the surface, and they'd done these scratch nights in various different places. And again, they were due to do their first scratch night at the Space, and had to be cancelled and rescheduled. But they're now doing an online scratch night, and they've trialled this. They had a small trial of this, so they're now kind of building up to a bigger one, and they're calling that scratching the servers rather than scratching the surface. And there's more information on their website, theundisposables.co.uk. They launched the call for creatives 2 days ago, I think. So they're looking for playwrights with work that they would like to be scratched. And they're looking for directors and actors to work on those things. They're a really, really lovely company to work with. So if there is anybody out there who's looking to do some online work, then I can highly recommend checking that stuff out. Another theatre company I want to give a bit of a shout out to is Part of the Main. They have been doing some online workshops. I took part in a QLab workshop. I thought it was an opportunity for me to brush up my technical skills. So I took part in their QLab workshop, which was brilliant. But they've done a whole range of online workshops that they're calling Part of the Grid. And I think those are well worth checking out as well. Yeah, so those are the people I wanted to shout out to. Is there any more questions out there? Anything else that they'd like to ask me about the space or the programme or anything like that? Just give me a moment for those to see what else I need to do. We're about, where are we now? What's the time? We've got about 4 minutes left. So if there are any final questions, I think I've got about 4 minutes left on here to answer those for you. But thank you all very much for joining and listening into what I've got to say. I hope you're all doing okay in these bizarre times. And I hope you'll come and check out some of what we're doing at the Space. As I said, we've got a really good full programme of events and activities over the coming weeks. There'll be more up on the website shortly. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/The Space. And we go live at 5 every Monday. So every Monday we have a live Facebook broadcast where we talk about what's coming up this week and other bits and pieces, and usually joined by my 7-year-old daughter Phoebe. She's been my co-host during lockdown, as my other co-host is on furlough, unfortunately. A quick shout out to Matthew Jameson. He's very much missed on Live at 5 and in other ways. Where can we find details of the courses? So the Theatre and Activism course is up on the website now. So if you go to space.org.uk and then go to What's On, you'll find it on the list there, along with the Space Theatre Club and the details about Scriptspace. The next course that we've got going up is our Improvisation and Clowning Laboratory. That should be up on the website either today or tomorrow. That will be going up. And then we've got a kids course going up there as well this week. And then the other 3 courses will happen in about sort of 5 or 6 weeks' time. So we'll get those up on the website in the next week or so as well. Thank you for all you're doing. That's lovely. Thank you very much. It's always nice to get little comments like that. Yeah, any final questions before I disappear? Just going to scroll down my... Oh, there we go. Great to hear. Stay safe. Bless. Thank you very much, Gina. You too. Great. Well, I think that's me done. A huge thank you to King's Head Theatre Online for letting me do this. Just a reminder that they are on. They're here every weekday at 1 o'clock on Facebook and on Instagram. And yeah, so check out the King's Head socials for more. Apologies to Instagram. I know I've had my face pointing more at Facebook than I have at you. My setup's a bit weird here, so I couldn't do both at the same time. But yeah, thank you all very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.